everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Andrea, and today I'd like to talk to you about occult detectives. This is still my baby stepping into the genre, and I'm loving it. It is so much fun, but I'm also kind of finding myself surprised by how flexible this subgenre is, because I always thought that to be a detective, you had to be the person that people call when there's ghostly things happening or unnatural, supernatural things. And I thought it was a bit more of a rigid job title in a similar way to private investigators, right? But as it turns out, this is kind of up in the air because of the broad spectrum of what the occult is. And that in itself has given an abundance of settings and characters and situations which really surprised me, but in the best way. I am loving this. I'm probably gonna keep reading occult detectives outside of October. I don't really like time limits. I think that's been one of my biggest issues with booktube events. I don't like being told that you have to start and end reading something here. So I'm hoping that what these events do for people is give them a taste of something that they weren't gonna try before. And then, they get introduced to something and then they keep loving it and they keep reading it, right? And I hope that that's what you take from my recent announcement for Dinovember, where we read dinosaur books. It's like, no, you don't have to just read it in that month. It's forever and always. I just want people to have the opportunity to be introduced to some books or explore the genre a bit more with members of the community, and we're all participating in them, right? It's not just a group of people that do it, and it's not just restricted to a number of people. Like, I just want this to be accessible and always fun. Like, it's supposed to be fun. And with occult detectives, this event forced me to look closer at the genre. So last year when I was introduced to it, I immediately picked up the Thomas Carnegie stories by William Hope Hodgson. I reviewed it somewhere, and I was introduced to it because of Roy from the channel Roy Reads Anything, and he has done some amazing videos on occult detectives, and we're going to talk about Roy a bit more because Roy's a bit more than just involved in the genre. He has written an entire thesis on occult detectives, so he kind of provided me with a non-fiction introduction to this genre as well. In addition to all that, I have now just gotten the last 2 issues of Occult Detective magazine. Now, as you can tell, these are a bit more bookish. They don't feel like magazines. They feel more like an anthology of short stories, and it does feel bookish, right? And the difference between number 10 and 11 is from summer of 2023 to summer of 2025. So you can tell it takes a bit of time for all of this work that goes into it, the artwork. We're gonna talk more about this in a separate video because I want to give these my full and undivided attention. And I want to talk a bit more about the artwork as well involved because they're beautiful. But when I posted a picture when I got these, a lot of people said, I didn't even know this existed. I didn't know that this was a magazine. I didn't know this was a publication. I didn't know that there was such a thing as an occult detective magazine or a subgenre of occult detectives. So in essence, for many people, this is a new thing. And I want people to know that this exists and that the genre exists. And just a bit more about this before I move on to the stories that I read is that these magazines are divided in half, kind of, where the first half you have fiction about occult detection, and they're all contemporary by new and emerging artists. But the second half is non-fiction essays. So in this latest one, you have 2 non-fiction essays. One of them is done by Roy from the channel Roy Reads Anything, and one of them is done by Ollie from Criminolly. So 2 booktubers have been featured in this new anthology in the non-fiction section. So it's kind of both familiar and new, and it's exciting. So yeah, I just wanted to give them a quick shout out in this video. Also, since we're on the topic of both Roy and the magazine, quite recently Roy has done a live stream with the editor of the Occult Detective magazine. So I'm gonna put that video somewhere too, because listening to them talk, Dave and Roy, like, they're so knowledgeable about these things, and it's made me so excited about the genre and where it's heading, and just the whole history of it is fascinating. So I'll link all of those things and more down below so you can check them out too and have fun. So the first book that I picked up was one of the British Library Tales of the Weird. I collect these. This was one of the first 5 I got, and it's been sitting on my shelf for a while. And if you want to know more about this collection, I'll link my video somewhere. Now, this is called The Ghost Slayers, Thrilling Tales of Occult Detection, and it's edited by Mike Ashley, who is the same editor of the Depths book about ships, which I reviewed some time ago. It was my favorite book of last year. And in this book, we have various authors, and you kind of get to sample a bit of their work. Now, the thing is, realizing too that some of these stories belong to a bigger corpus of stories. So for example, with Algernon Blackwood, there's one John Silence story, but he has a collection of stories about John Silence, this doctor, occult detective. Then, for example, there's one story here from William Hope Hodgson, but it's a Carnegie story, and there's 6 at least of Carnegie as a bundle where you can read them back to back. So all of these can lead you down a path where you can find more. Now, the first story that I read was called The Story of the Moor Road by Kate and Hesketh Pritchard. And this is about this ghostly presence that's harassing people in a particular location. I want to kind of compare it to the Troll at the Bridge kind of vibes, but you get a very heightened atmospheric review of this moor and this road. It's very reminiscent of The Hound of the Baskervilles in many ways. I think the atmosphere in this one it's interesting and it's good, and then you have multiple characters reporting seeing similar things, and you kind of have to collect the stories and try to figure it out. And the second story that I read is called A Psychical Invasion by Algernon Blackwood, and this was the Silence story. And this was funny. It was funny, scary, but it also, again, it just tapped into what I would consider mental health problems today. So you have this person who is an author, and he started to write a lot of strange things, and he starts to laugh maniacally all of the time. And there's characters that show up for him and come to life. So his family's concerned, and they call Dr. Silence to investigate what is happening. And it's related to drugs, and he's kind of tripping. Again, I don't know how much to say without giving things away, because it is a short story and the whole point of it is the weirdness and the intrigue. But I found that this story in particular did make me wonder a lot about how this story would be written today, given what we know about mental health, given what we know about drugs, and mushrooms and all of the things. So, an interesting story. Now, my favorite from this collection, which I fell in love with, was Forgotten Harbor by Gordon Hillman. I will link the audio somewhere. You have to experience this story. It is beautiful. It's something I would call nautical horror for sure, because it takes place in a harbor and there's a lighthouse. There was a murder and some disappearing people, and there's a mysterious phone call with the tap of a cane, and every night there's like one less tap. It's kind of like a countdown to an event. And there were some gruesome murders involving someone being blinded by the light of the lighthouse. So there's a chance there might be a blind ghost. There's a lot happening in here, but it's also got this very creepy, thick fog and the nautical kind of descriptions of the coastal town. It's phenomenal. I love this. I loved it so much. And in the process of wanting to listen to people talk about this story, I stumbled across this new podcast, or new to me, but I don't know if they're still publishing podcast episodes. They might have stopped. But part of their podcast episodes was dealing with this whole book and also the depths one, the one that I really loved. And the podcast is called Whiskey and Weird. And you can find it online and on Spotify and all the places. And if you want to just listen to a group of people discussing every story in here, you can. Yeah, this story made me want to talk about it with people, and it made me want to listen to what other people thought of it. Like I really felt like I wanted to unpack it. So yeah, highly recommend that one. So if you want to pick just one story from this collection, I would definitely lead with that one. I have read the Carnegie stories last year, and I might dip in and out of some of the other ones, but if I put this down for a while and pick something else up, it's not the end of the world. I don't think I have to do cover to cover with this. Now, the other thing I sort of started was Ghostly Clients and Demonic Culprits, The Roots of Occult Detective Fiction. And the thing is, I thought this whole thing would be nonfiction, but it's not. It's an anthology, and it anthologizes early detection of the occult. So it starts with Pliny the Younger. That's how far back we're going, okay? And then it goes like medieval a little bit, and then early 1840s, and then we kind of build up to early 20th century. But when I say early, I mean like cutoff is 1900. I'm putting this on pause because all I really read was the introduction. Now, I did read one Simon If story from Aleister Crowley. I was told it's pronounced Crowley, like it's supposed to rhyme with holy. And he's like the occultist of the 20th century. And the story I read is called Ineligible. Now, I didn't love it, and I think part of it is just I wasn't interested in what was happening. He didn't really set a mood. He didn't heighten the atmosphere. Now, I did pick a story at random, so maybe that wasn't the best decision. I have to go back and explore some of the earlier ones. I just opened it up and saw one story that looked medium length, and I just went for it. If you've read any of this and you have a few favorites, like top-notch stories from this collection, please let me know, because I don't want to spend too much time if it's not that great. I only have time for the amazing and spectacular right now. And speaking of that, I will say that what did blow my mind and rocked my world is Robert T. Howard. And that is for the next episode. So we're going to talk about that in our Weird Wednesday. So I will see you in a future video very soon. Bye.